Hey guys, and welcome back to Runway from the Rav, a Project Runway podcast. My name is Riley.
And I'm Maggie.
And today we'll be discussing Season 16, Episode 10, Driving Miss Unconventional. So this episode was our Lexus challenge of the season, and the designers were tasked with creating an unconventional look based on safety items. So they met Tim and some Lexus guy out at a parking lot, and the guy talked about how Lexus cars are very safe. And so they had 3 SUVs stuffed to the gills with safety equipment, which was like caution tape, rafts, life jackets, like traffic cones, fence, all kinds of like road construction stuff. And the designers had 3 minutes to wrestle it out of the SUVs into their own private trash can. And then they were tasked with creating like a runway ready look that didn't conform to the rules, and it was going to be a 1-day challenge, and then they would not be going to mood at all. So you only got these unconventional materials. So what did you think of that challenge?
It's fine. I mean, I'm glad we got another unconventional one. I felt like the materials were really crappy though.
I feel like they're hard to work with, and also wasn't it like last season or the season before? No, it was All Stars. They also did a similar, they had like medical supplies, because I remember Char made like a dress out of gloves, and I think it was Sam Donovan made a like fire hose dress, and then we got another fire hose look. So it's just like, I know unconventional materials are not limitless, but there's certainly more options than like mood fabrics. I just feel like we just had, or I don't know, that was All Stars last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it just felt like similar material. So it's still fun to see them like pick up a traffic cone and like a raft and be like, I gotta make what? But at the same time, it's like, I feel like we just recently had a unconventional challenge with similar materials. So,
well, yeah. And are you talking about like this season too? Because I feel like these safety materials were like kind of similar to the trash.
I'm sorry, recycled materials.
Recycled!
Not trash.
Whoa.
But yeah, it felt very like you just get like scraps of plastic and bits and bobs of this and that. And then, I mean, this one, at least it wasn't recycled or like dirty, but still it just seemed odd. And then I don't know how Lexus, I get the safety kind of, like connection, but I don't know about the idea of filling like a really nice Lexus SUV with just a bunch of random stuff. It looked like garbage just packed to the gills, and then it's like, is that a good Lexus likes that look, just filled with junk? But I guess, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Because the winner of the competition gets a Lexus at the end, so there's almost always a Lexus challenge. But this one just felt a little like, maybe not super related. Like, we have safety settings. Make something out of traffic cones, kids. Like, I don't know. But that was the look. And then a 1 day with unconventional is really going to limit some designers' creativity, but also just how they can transform it. Because in years past, the unconventional materials challenge, you had to transform it so it doesn't look like any of the items you used. I feel like in most recent seasons, sometimes that's the case and sometimes it isn't, like on a look by look basis. Like one look will look nothing like the materials and they're like, eh. And then the next piece will just look like exactly what, like just a big trash bag, or it looks exactly like what it is. And they're like, this is great, ready to wear. So
yeah,
I feel like they used to be way stricter on that in early seasons. But still, unconventional is fun just because the designers are like literally looking at a pile of junk going, I have to make something for the runway that will be aired on national television out of like light reflectors and fencing. Like,
yeah,
that's got to be a challenge for them. And then it's like, oh, and you have 1 day, so let's go.
It was crazy too that like there was no supplemental stuff. Like they couldn't even use muslin, I don't think.
I didn't see anybody with muslin, whereas normally that's like a big thing in unconventional challenges, is that like most people use muslin as like the base coat, as it were, of their design. Yeah. But I didn't see any this time. Not to say they didn't use it, but there was like there's bandages and stuff, so it felt less like road safety or construction items and more like the All Stars one. I don't know. I just wish they differentiate the unconventional. Like, while it was weird last year when they went to Austin, Texas and got like mealworms and birdseed, at least it was weird. So.
Or like there's another season where they had to make stuff out of candy.
Yes.
That was a good one.
Or the grocery store one with our beloved Austin Scarlett. Yeah, they just, I don't know. This one just felt a little samey. But if you don't normally watch All Stars, then maybe it didn't. But I agree with you. It kind of felt like the recycling one too. But
yeah.
The only real drama in that moment was Kenya didn't feel like she got enough. Because like I said, they only had 3 minutes. So you were like wrestling like caution tape and like that orange like snow fencing out of a car, so it's all stuck up on stuff. So you might be trying to grab like life jackets or like a hose or something that's more fabricy, but it's all tangled up. So 3 minutes is not much time to get stuff. And then there's 3 SUVs and 6 designers, so you know you're kind of like a Lady in the Tramping, like with your spaghetti materials, like ripping it apart at the middle. But so she felt like she didn't get enough stuff. I feel like everybody else, like, they had enough things. It's just like, what am I supposed to make out of this?
Yeah.
Boys, I guess we'll get to the workroom.
Mm-hmm.
So the big struggle this time was Kenya. I felt they focused on her a lot, that she didn't have enough material. She basically got like a raft, like an inflatable raft, and then she got seatbelts.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't really get a whole lot else, or not enough of anything else to make a look. So she was struggling there. Brandon was struggling just with the conception of the look.
Mm-hmm.
And then otherwise, just the feel of the workroom was a little different because it's the top 6 now. So there's a little more pressure. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody was saying that like it was starting to get tense. And then, like, Kenya was going around, like, does anybody else have these kind of seatbelts, these black seatbelts? And, like, no one wanted to share. Like, people were like, well, I have some, but I don't know if I'll use them yet. Which is fair, because you certainly wouldn't want to undersell yourself because you were, like, too giving of items in, like, hour 1. And then turns out, oh, I need those.
Right.
So, but it did feel a little like people were like, you know, when it had been so open and nice last episode, you know, with the twins gone, everybody was like, oh my God, it's like a party. So this one felt more like, oh, you can't be safe.
Yeah.
You can win and still go home. You know, there's like, so it felt a little more tense that way. But we did learn a little bit about like the last 2 designers that we haven't really seen much of their like life yet. And that was Michael and Kenya. So they both called home. Michael called his sister. And then Kenya called her mom, who was at a family reunion. And Kenya was like, well, I'm not there. But, and they were both really supportive of them being there. And that was kind of nice because this far along in the season, you don't always still get those nice touches of like, you know, back to their reality, which is that they've been away from home for quite a while. And they can't communicate with their family while they're there. So they can't like call them or text them every night and be like, hey, things went well, or hey, things aren't going well. They just... you know, they're like in an isolated bubble, no internet, no anything. They're just there and for like a couple intense weeks. But so that was nice to see them. And then Michael has another sister who just went through surgery. So his other sister was giving him some updates on her and stuff like that. And then they were all struggling, I think. Ayana seemed to have the clearest vision, but she was worried about time. Margarita, like, had an early idea, but then just kept looking, like, at Ayana's and was like, I gotta do more. Yeah. And then Kenya was looking at Margarita's and be like, what do you mean more? I'm making out a seatbelt. So, and then Kentaro was struggling a bit because he wanted to use a fire hose. And as he cut it open, he's like, whoa, this is, like, filled with fabric. And he didn't know that. And then Tim comes around and is like, well, if the judges see, like, you're using fabric, they won't like that. But we've seen before... I think Sam either won or was pretty high up for his, like, fire hose. Like, he made, like, a jacket, didn't he? On All Stars?
I don't remember this.
I thought he made, like, a really cool, like, wrap, like, jacket or, like, a dress, maybe. But I thought they liked it.
I believe you. I just can't remember.
It was a while ago.
Like.
It was a while ago. So Kentaro was like, okay, I feel like I need to add more to it then. And then later on, we'll get to it, but, like, the judges were like, we actually just preferred it if you didn't add all these other things tacked on. So it's like, you know, sometimes Tim leads you in the right direction. Sometimes, because he doesn't see the final look yet, he's just based off what you have on the form and, like, the sketch you show him. It's like, you know, he may or may not, you know, lead you right. But otherwise, was there anything else in the workroom that stood out to you? I mean, Ayana was like breaking little like plastic reflectors like on the side of the road with a mallet. It seemed like most of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, she was like, and then the next day when they come in and have like an hour, she's like still breaking them because she covered her top with like a mosaic of them. But it felt like anytime there was a dull moment, cut to Ayana, bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that stood out to you?
Just like a weird little thought about Kenya. Did she use that raft at all?
That was the underpiece.
Oh,
so that's what she like sewed or glued the seatbelt onto.
Okay. Because, yeah, when she showed that, I was like, well, that's like a lot to work with. Like, that's the biggest piece you could have grabbed of like continuous material, you know?
Yeah, well, and the bottom was like black, and then it must have had like either yellow or orange top, but you cut open a raft, and that's, a ton of like vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess she used that for the underpiece. At least that's what she said on the runway.
Okay.
Because I was confused too. Because I'm like, well, you have a gigantic raft.
Yeah.
And she had a smaller model, so I could see the concern. Like for unconventional materials, for some of the plus size models, you need even more material because that's just a larger body just needs more like material over it. But that hasn't been a struggle this season. Really, it hasn't come up. But it was just like, yeah. Kenny, I'm like, you probably have like the largest swath of close to fabric material, but obviously you can't just wrap a raft around people. Raft wrap. Hashtag raft wrap. But otherwise, Brandon did originally, he was going to make a look using like an emergency like foil kind of blanket, like a heat blanket.
Yeah.
And Tim didn't really like it, but Brandon was like, well, it's what I got. So he was sewing it, and it was starting to rip as he was attempting to hem it. And then when his model came in, he was attempting to put it on her, and the more they like messed with it, it just started to rip, and by the end it was like completely like ripped apart to shreds.
Yeah.
So unfortunately he had to go back to the drawing board, but he ended up using life vests, like life jackets, and I think that was a way more successful look for him on the runway.
Yeah.
But so that was a bit of drama. Last week Brandon was struggling a bit as well. Like he really struggled with the the avant-garde stuff, and then this time he was struggling again, which for like this season I feel like he's been put in like an Erin kind of. Last season Erin, like even when she was in the bottom, the judges didn't care. Like she was in the bottom like 2 or 3 times I think in a row near the end of the season, or the middle part of the season, I'm sorry, and they were just like, you're safe. Like they never were like, hey, those shorts you made with the embroidery were ugly, or hey, this thing you made doesn't look good. And this is the same thing. Like Brandon just, they like what he makes, and he makes the same kind of thing, and that's obviously his aesthetic, and that's fine. Sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't. But it just feels like even when he struggles, it's like, well, it doesn't matter. If you go home, Tim will save you.
Yeah.
Because the Tim save is still here. And since its introduction, he has always used it. So.
Yeah.
And she brought it up this time, Heidi did on the runway. Really obviously. She's like, and then she like turned around, she's like, Tim, it's the 10th episode and you haven't used it. And he's like, there's still time. So they're going to use it because it adds more drama of like somebody went home and then he can save them. But I doubt we'll have like a big drama fest again. So like last season he used it to save Cornelius, who was bullied. And while we weren't fans of Cornelius last season, you can listen to our podcast from last season. We were not fans of Cornelius. But in that particular instance, the save felt somewhat justified because it was really unfair. In a team challenge, to be thrown under the bus and go home when you actually worked the hardest, that's a bummer. Or in other previous seasons, like he saved Char to have like put her in the top 4 again because there were some issues there with like Karina and everything. So he almost always uses it. I don't see this time being drama now that the twins are gone. And then Michael and Margarita, kind of behind the scenes, they talk some trash. They throw some shade, both of them. This episode, it felt like every time Margarita or Michael were saying something about someone else's design, like they're not designers, they're dressmakers. It cut to their ugly garment they're working on, or like I think it's a taste level cut to them like making like a bra out of football pads. So I don't know. It's also the editing. The editing this episode felt really like on the nose. So
yeah.
Boys, do you have anything else in the workroom?
I don't think so. All
right, let's move on to the runway then. So, our guest this time was Carly Chaikin. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. She's from Mr. Robot. I've never heard of her. I've never seen the show. I've heard it's really good, but I've never seen it. I think I mentioned last episode how I wish they would change up the guest judges to be people more related to fashion or whatever, like, the theme is. Mm-hmm. I think this episode proved my point. No offense, but this guest judge, the most poignant, I mean, I have a couple as quotes of the week, so I don't want to spoil them here, but some of the things she said just had no insight whatsoever and just felt like, why are you here? And she's not the only one. I don't want to just, throw her under the bus. But it just feels like, I get that they want, like, young actresses to, like, for, like, the next upcoming movie or TV show. And I know Mr. Robot's coming back on air. But it just feels like it's not a fit.
No.
Maybe if they were there for, like, the red carpet challenge, or if they had, like, a musical guest there for, like, some type of music-related challenge, or a dancer or something for the dance-related challenge, that would make more sense to me. But when it's just a random starlet, number 12, talking about runway looks, I don't know. Yeah. I'd prefer something else. But this one was really like, yep, still feel the same way. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so first up, down the runway, we had Brandon. And like I said, he used life jackets. He also used a safety raft and a seatbelt and a hose. And his look was a crop top and like a flowy kind of like circle skirt. But yep, a crop top and then random straps, because it's not Brandon if it isn't random straps, slightly oversized, and then like crop top for women's wear anyway. But this one was colorful and really graphic. So the top was a oversized kind of crop top. Half of it was black and half of it was yellow with like orange accents. Mm-hmm. And then some straps hanging off the back. And it had like kind of like 3/4 length sleeves. And then the skirt was like a circle skirt, but it was pretty flouncy. Mm-hmm. It was quite short in the back. But that's just kind of the nature of circle skirts. If you have a larger butt, we'll say, booty. If you got a bit of a booty, skirts can sometimes, they're shorter in the back. And you only have so much material here. And then it was black with like white kind of graphic lines from the hose. And then he trimmed it with yellow. And then the waistband of that was like a seatbelt. So what did we think of Brandon's?
I loved it. I think this is my favorite look that he's ever made. Like, it was really cool. And like everything you just said, it was really graphic. I think Nina said she felt like it almost read as like a print with the orange on there. Mm-hmm. And it did, because like there was some like text in the orange, because I don't know what it was, caution stuff or...
Yeah, it came from like the inflatable life vest things.
Yeah, it had like some text writing on it. And like, it was just cool. And I liked all the lines that he put in and all the little details. And it was good to have like that bold color. Which, not that he could necessarily, like, choose what color, I guess. But right. Still, like, he used it very thoughtfully.
He did, yes.
But, yeah, I really liked it. What'd you think?
I agree. This is my favorite thing Brandon has made. I liked the graphic nature of it a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, he definitely lucked out with that bright yellow. But with his original look, he was working with just black and silver. And I don't think that would have been as successful for him. Not only, he was still making a crop top out of like the safety blanket, but I don't think it would have been as successful because it's already kind of crinkly. And then just black and silver isn't, but this yellow and then the orange, white and black, it's just a nice color story. And then we've already seen like a bisected t-shirt on this this season, because the twins made one, right? Mm-hmm. Where it was like half like dark greenish black and then half white. This is way more successful here. It makes sense. And yeah, it just looks cool. It doesn't look like unconventional materials at all. Like, I know that they are, and I'm sure the poor model wearing it can feel that they are. Yeah. But I don't know. I liked it quite a bit. And even though it's a Brandon crop top with random straps, I don't know. I liked it.
Yeah, it was really good.
And all 6 of them were chosen for critique because we're in the final 6 now, but he was in the top. Mm-hmm. Next up, we had Kentaro, and he struggled a bit just because after his critique with Tim, he was afraid that the fire hose wasn't enough. But he ended up making his look out of primarily fire hose, and then I believe he cut up like a traffic cone to make some like arrows. So what this was is it's also crop top made out of a fire hose that he cut, and then he frayed the bottom. So it's a crop top with like little cap sleeves, and then it has yellow and orange kind of chevron arrows that he just glued on top in a pattern. And then he paired it with kind of a high-waisted pleated skirt out of the same fire hose, quite short, and then he put more arrows on that. And then his model this week was Lyris, and he styled her with like front like braids, and then paired it with some I don't normally talk about the accessories or hair, but this is important of why. With like, because he frayed the ends, and he put her in like some frayed like shoes with like some tassels. What did we think of Kentaro's?
Definitely not my favorite thing that he's ever made. The judges did not like the stuff that he glued on there. And
yeah, his appliques made it feel I think Nina said like Navajo, but it felt like those like bad costumes around Halloween time that are not empowering that culture, but just, you know, kind of exploiting it, and this felt similar.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. Kentaro's Japanese, so he might not, you know quite like that's what he's representing here, but it's pretty obvious to others.
Do you have Lyris's quote for your quotes of the week? Okay, and then I won't say it because Lyris had some thoughts.
Yeah, I have a couple model quotes this week actually.
And
Lyris always has some thoughts.
And she was on point as usual. And it just, there's not like a ton to say about it. At least not for me, I guess. It just like, he ruined it when he glued those things on there. Like, it's too bad. Because I love Kentaro.
I know, his personality's so cute.
But not my favorite.
And earnest, yeah. I wanted to like this because I really like the idea of, like, I liked, in All Stars, I liked Sam's version of, like, I think it was a jacket. For some reason, it's in my head as a jacket. Out of a fire hose, and it looked really graphic and kind of cool because he didn't do anything else to it. And, like, the inside of a fire hose is, like, black vinyl, and he used some of that as well. And so, to me, this just feels a little matchy-matchy top to bottom to not use, like, flip the hose around and have it be, like, a black skirt or something. And then the pleated skirt is a little schoolgirl to me. And then same with the crop top. And then, the little, like, chevron arrows just cheapen it. And then the styling of Lyris is just really bad. The braids with long, like, strings tied to them, and then the heels that are also kind of reminiscent of, like, Native American design. It felt costumey and not in a good way or like a well-intentioned way. So not a fan. And he used fire hose, and it looks like fire hose. But he was in the bottom, so the judges did agree. Next up, we had Michael. And he had an idea right away, but then he struggled after his critique with Tim of, like, what to put underneath it, because he wanted to work with, like, a bondagey look. Because every season, at least one designer thinks that bondage design is new and fresh and really pushing it out there. And it's like, you know, it's 2017. We're a modern time. I think people are aware that, you know, these subcultures exist. And you're not the first person to put, like, him and Samantha and Brandon have all worn, like, leather harnesses, like, just in their normal outfits, like, on the runway. So I'm like, I feel like that kind of, like, BDSM, like, adjacent bondage leather design, like, it's becoming a little more mainstream. But he used bungee cords, a, like, blue safety harness, and then bandages in his look. And what he ended up making, the top is, like, a blue, like, bralette / like, tiny crop top made out of a harness. And then he paired that with a skirt that he made out of bandages. And they were either black or he painted them black. But it's a real tight little kind of high-waisted black skirt. And then over top of the skirt, he glued, like, this netting, like black netting over it. And then over top of all of that, he crisscrossed bungee cords just all over. What did we think of Michael's?
This one, like, I feel bad, but I didn't hate it. Like, I didn't think it was that, like, atrocious. I really liked the bralette part. I thought that was kind of cool. And, like, I like how he styled the model. Like, it's definitely not his best look, But I felt like it had like a clear vision, at least, like with the styling and everything. Like it all went together. Everybody, like the judges were saying, like, "Oh, it's pretty hookery." I don't think so.
This poor model's been called a hooker twice now this season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Whatever. I like Michael. I don't know. What do you think?
I think this would have been more successful without the bungee cords or with the bungee cords used in a different way. I think the bungee cords are very unflattering across the top, and I think it's Zach Posen who pointed out it's just squishing her breasts down. And then this is a skinny model, but the way that it is so tight on her hips across the skirt that it's giving her like rolls down the side of her thigh where there is not extra rolls on her own body. So to me that was so unflattering, just these like weird lumps all over her hips that I'm just like, I don't get it. It's not flattering. I get what he's going for, the bondagey thing, but I think it would have been better if he'd maybe painted the bungees like black or some other color and then used them in the harness style that the other designers and himself have been wearing. Like he was wearing a black leather harness on the runway tonight. I think it would have been more successful if he had done it that way instead of just all over her body like a fishnet. Because I liked the treatment of the skirt. It was a last minute idea of his to put the netting on, but I actually really liked that. And yeah, I think the bralette top fits well except for what he did over top of it.
Yeah.
But then, I disagree because I think the styling of his model's hair didn't help it. But I think if her hair was down, it just would have got caught in the bungees.
Well, yeah.
But it's like a really high top knot, and then her bangs are like that real blunt, straight across bang. So it just seems, I don't know. And then the skirt is so short. And she's wearing like really tall black stilettos. It looks a lot like the outfit in that Julia Roberts wears.
Pretty Woman?
In Pretty Woman. Yeah, like the blue is like the same color. Because I don't hate the color story here. I think that blue and the black look good. But adding the bungees just, I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, it's unresolved.
Well, but without the bungees, though.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
So then it is nothing.
Ah, God
and
dang
he was
it.
in the bottom. Next up we had Ayana, and she had an idea from the get-go and went with it. Yeah. And she did mention that because she's a modest designer that she needed to get more like materials than other people, and she mentioned that in the last Unconventional as well. And she was successful this time at getting plenty. So she used reflectors, like those little round plastic reflectors, fence, caution tape, and a raft, and then a hard hat, and caution, yeah, I already said caution tape, okay. And so she put down, her model had like a headscarf or hijab made out of caution tape with an askew hard hat on top, and then the top of the garment was made with a raft. The black part of a raft had a real strong shoulder, and that shoulder was like knee pads or something underneath. And then the front of this like black, it's high necked, and then it goes all the way down the sleeve. It's very fitted to her body though, and it's like this black kind of pleather. It's got a zip up the back, and then on the front it's got this mosaic pattern of those reflectors. So it's kind of like fire. So it's got red ones, orange ones, and then a little blue at the neck. And that blue at the neck will come up in my quotes of the week.
Oh my God.
And then at the bottom, so about from like her midriff down, it just becomes like this like fiery bush of orange, like that snow fencing. And then she dabbed some like black paint onto areas. And then she mixed some of that like black like mesh as well. So, and it's just huge and poofy to the floor then. What did we think of Ayana's?
This one was pretty cool. I liked her vision for it. And it turned out pretty cool. But like, to me, it wasn't like totally transformed. Like, obviously she did a lot with it. And she like, she crushed up all those reflectors and, like...
I'm sorry, she smashed them.
Oh. Smashed. Okay.
Smashed. Hammer. Smashed.
And then, like, she, as you said, like, she put paint on that snow fencing. But, like, to me, it still looked very much like snow fencing. Like, you knew exactly what it was. And, like, the smashed, like, bits, like, that's what it looked like. It looked like smashed bits. It wasn't, like... It was like some beautiful sequin beaded something. Like, it was just a top with, like, stuff glued on it. At least to me. Like, I don't know. I didn't care that much about the red versus the blue. That didn't make a huge difference to me. I liked it. I liked that she styled it with the hard hat. But that also, like, it's not like that was really transformed. Like,
no, she, like, dabbed paint on an orange hard hat and...
Yeah, it was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know. It was cool. It was, like, this one read avant-garde to me, too. Like, kind of like her... kind of like the challenge last week. But, just because it was, like, so dramatic. At least compared to everybody else's. It was nice. It just... I don't know. I'm not completely won over by it. What do you think?
I did forget to mention, I believe this model is Misha.
Mm-hmm.
And when she first came out on the runway, there was yellow caution tape, like, loosely placed over her, and Ayana wanted her to, like, rip it off, throw it on the ground, and then start her walk, and she did do that, to just add, like, a little more punch. I actually like the hard hat. I like that it's, like, off to the side. I think it gives, like, this, and then with the high neck and everything, I think it gives this kind of, like, cool vibe of, like, I don't really care. Like, I'm here, but I don't want to be on this runway, but it's just here. I really like the black top a lot. I don't like the mosaic pattern on top of it at all. Like you said, it doesn't look like bits of glass or beading or anything. It just looks like she hot glued a bunch of, like, plastic pieces. I would have much preferred it if it was just the black top, because that is transformed to me. I would never think that was a raft. It fits so well, and it just looks like a cool, like, vinyl or pleather material. And I almost would have wished she made it into, like, a cool jacket or something and just pretended it was leather or something. But I want to like the skirt, but if you just watch it walk down the runway and back, I like it. But if you look at it more closely, it looks kind of like a mess. Yeah. But she transformed it in the way that it became, like, this voluminous thing, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody use fencing like that. No. In an unconventional challenge, and just go for that volume play of just, like, over the top. So in that case, I like, for an unconventional challenge, I liked it. But yeah, it's not my favorite look this week, but I do like it, and I like that we're seeing a different side of Ayana. Like, it's still modest, but ever since, like, last week, it seems like she's really now going to play with volume and proportion and stuff, so that's kind of fun. Although it was a little hard for Misha to hear and for her to walk around in. Yeah. And I'm sure, like, there's probably not much, like over her legs, I think, is more of the raft, like, hiding her legs from view, but that can't be comfortable. Like... But it's unconventional. It's supposed to be comfortable or ever worn again. And she was in the top. And then we had Kenya, who struggled a lot this week. But what she ended up putting down the runway was made out of, like, raft and then seat belts, black seat belts. And this was a little black dress, strapless, with a little V cut out over at the top. And then it was belted with a seat belt. And then there was a couple parts with the hardware pointed out. And then it had a really big, exaggerated hip. And then came back in kind of tight right above the knee. So what did we think? Oh, I'm sorry. And Kenya, right before they were leaving for the runway, her zipper broke, which happens at least once a season. It seems like someone's zipper breaks. I remember in All Stars, I think it was, Char's zipper broke. And Tim went around and was like, could she have 10 minutes to put the zipper back on? And all the designers had to vote yes or no for her to sew her zipper back in. This time, because it was unconventional challenge and they were literally leaving the room, she just did what she could, tried to, like, pin it and sew it, and just left it. So, like, her model wasn't exposed, but you could tell that, like, the zipper was broken. So what did we think of Kenya's?
I was not a huge fan of this. Like, I don't know. To me, like, I didn't like the shape of it very much. Like, the wide hip was, like, really weird. And I don't know. Like, it did read as, like, very simple to me because it was just all black, and then all you saw was the seatbelt, which, like, as you said, she used the raft underneath, but you
right,
don't
and then
see
she, like,
that.
crisscrossed it, the seatbelt over the top, and she did paint the seatbelts a bit, and I did forget to mention she made a tiny, like, hat / pin that kind of went over on one side of the model's head, this little hat. And then it had, like, some of that black mesh. So it kind of looked like a little veil that, like, fancy olden times people wore to, like, funerals and stuff.
Yeah. This one, it was just okay. I mean, at least there wasn't a peplum. She probably would have done one if she'd had more material, honestly. But I don't know. I just wasn't into this one. What do you think?
I wanted to like this because I like the idea of a seatbelt dress. like a little black dress. I just did not like the exaggerated hips, and to me they don't look even. It's hard to tell because she's like, obviously the model's walking and then she like leans into one hip when she stands still, but they didn't look symmetrical to me, and I don't know if that's by design or not. And also, I feel bad for saying this because this is a pretty model, but ever since Kenya had her for like to me it just reminds me of 101 Dalmatians. She reminds me of Cruella de Vil from the streetwear challenge, where she had like green pants and this black and white top, and now this model to me is just, she just is Cruella de Vil, and this looks like an evildoer outfit. And then paired with the little hat with like the little frill, it's like this is what Cruella de Vil wears to like her 15th dead husband's funeral. Like, to me, it's the over-exaggerated hip, and just how the hip goes out and then severely cuts back in just feels like a Disney villain's design. Where they have, like, those over-exaggerated, like, almost all the Disney villains have, like, one over-exaggerated kind of, like, feminine trait or, like, sexualized trait. And, it, like, this case, it's the huge, like, hip. And then it cuts back into tiny little legs and tiny little waist. And then the little hat. So, I don't mean to pigeonhole this model. She's pretty, and I'm sure she has a lot of range. But to me, and I like Kenya's tailoring, it just doesn't look very well done here. And I get seatbelts are hard, but you know what? Everybody was dealing with similar hardships, and this is season 16. There's been a lot of unconventional challenges that frankly had way harder things to work with than fabric seatbelts. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll never forget the corn husk dress.
No.
Ever. That was amazing. Or the things people have made out of candy, or last season, the stuff people were making out of like metal and bird seed, fabric seatbelts. I don't want to hear it. I'm glad she painted it. That helped a lot. But yeah, even with the broken zipper, it's not a lot.
Well, and to me, a seatbelt dress isn't that original. Like, I feel like that's been done.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as the bondage dress to me. Like, it's equal. They're both, like, ideas that have already been done.
Right. Yeah. Where it's, I don't know. It just doesn't seem enough. And then making it only black because she got nothing else. Like, it would have been nice if she, like, lined the belt or added, like, a trim or something on, like, those, like, diagonal lines across with, like, some of the red or orange from her raft or just something else. Mm-hmm. But maybe she would have if she had more than one day, but it just felt a little like it didn't go far enough. But she was in the top. There was 4 in the top, 2 in the bottom this time. But I think Kenya was really the swing vote. I feel like in previous seasons, if you had a zipper broken on the runway, you would have gotten torn apart. And it felt like they didn't care at all.
No.
They're like, oh, Kenya, you're fine.
It wasn't even discussed, really.
Yeah. They brought it up, I think, when the judges were looking at it closely, and Tim mentioned that it happened right at the end. And then Zach Posen was like, well, that happens all the time. Like, zippers go out all the time. It's a normal thing. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then last up down the runway, we had Margarita, who had a lot to say about other people's designs and who they were as people and creators. And what she put down used probably the most items out of anybody, and the most color for sure. So she used knee pads, helmets, hard hats, caution tape, reflectors, a safety harness. A lot. So this was basically a 2-piece, kind of like a bralette / crop top paired with then like a skirt. So the top is a blue harness, like safety harness, worn right where you'd wear a harness. And then over top of the harness, she had 2 knee pads sewn on to look like a bra. And then over the shoulders, she sawed a hard hat in half and used those as like big over-exaggerated plastic like shoulder pads. And then the dress is caution tape that she like braided. And then she went in and like glued broken reflector bits a la Ayana all over the skirt. And the skirt was pretty tight and quite short. What did we think of Margarita's?
This one was just okay to me. Like, I mean, obviously Margarita has a huge problem with comparing her work to what other people are doing.
Yes.
And she's like easily distracted by that. And then like, it's like she's not very confident in her own work or something, because then she constantly reworks to like try and match other people. Like adding the reflectors on the skirt, pointless, at least in my opinion. Like you could hardly see them because the skirt was already red, and then she put like red, orange reflectors on there. Like it really didn't do much for it. Like I like the harness part, but as you said, like that is where it would go naturally.
Well, like her and Tim both said like, oh, I love how you're using the harness. Or like, I'm so clever. And I'm like, No, that's how you wear it. Like, it might be backwards, but I don't think so. Like, I think that's just how you wear a harness.
I don't know. I definitely thought, like, she was pretty innovative. Like, I liked the idea of using the, what were they, knee or elbow pads? Whichever.
Knee pads,
as the bra. Like, that was pretty cool. And then that was pretty hardcore that she sawed through a hard helmet.
Yeah, like a hard hat, yeah.
I was just like, whoa.
Well, and then the model mentioned that she then used some of that, like, the, like, powder that came off the helmets, or the hard hats when she sawed them, and, like, glued that onto the top of the knee pads to bring in more blue. So, like, she really was using all her materials, even the dust.
Mm-hmm. Which, I do appreciate that. I do. But I don't know. This just, like, it wasn't my favorite look of the week, but I liked it. It was fine. It was alright. What'd you think?
I hated it.
You hated it?
I think Nina said of someone else's look, and it may have been Kenya's, that, like, you don't have to throw everything in the kitchen sink just because it's unconventional challenge. Cut to Margarita's look, where it's literally everything and the kitchen sink right in the kitchen. But everybody's acting like it's such a cool place for a sink. Like, this just, I like the skirt actually quite a bit. She crisscrossed, like, red and orange, like, caution tape. I actually like that, and it fit the model really well for being, like, really clear, like, plastic caution tape. I want to like the hard hat shoulders, but they're like tucked back, like, behind her shoulders in this weird way, so I don't like them. I don't like the knee pad thing in the front. It just looks like football pads, or that she's got, like, weird hard plastic boobs. The harness is not transformed. It's just a blue harness, right where you'd wear a blue harness. Congratulations. So I don't like it. I don't like it at all. None of it was transformed. None of it didn't look like what it was, except for the skirt to me. Well, we can disagree. You want to have a battle?
I guess we are. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it was my favorite look. I'm just saying I do appreciate, like, the ideas that she had, though. Like, I don't know. I know.
The idea of what? She was in the top, though. The judges liked it, but they've liked a lot of random things from Margarita this time. Like her, like, Bumba dress and things like that. So it turned out that Ayana was the winner of this challenge. Mm-hmm. How did we feel about that?
I don't agree.
Who did you think?
I would have gone with Brandon.
Yeah, same.
But, whatever.
Yeah.
They haven't been choosing what I wanted.
I'm glad she won this time, though, because I think she should have won last week.
Yeah.
I think her Shopkins shoppy dress was way better than Michael's disco ball thing, jumpsuit. Mm-hmm. So I liked that she at least won. And her piece, it was more runway impact. And sometimes the judges like that. Like, she really went all out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some of the unconventional materials were transformed, some not so much. I think all of Brandon's were. But he also used vinyl. She used, like, a fence and made it look like fashion. And he used a life jacket and made it look like clothes. So, from a creativity aspect, I guess I'll give it to her. But this is the first time where I'm like, yeah, I think Brandon should win. I really liked it. It looked like fun streetwear and cool graphic. And, of course, this is the time he doesn't.
Yep.
But that meant that Brandon, Kenya, and Margarita were safe, with Ayana being the winner. And so the bottom then was Kentaro and Michael. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that Michael went home. Did you agree with that?
I don't know. Like, I mean, no, I don't think so. I don't know. This one's tough. Because I did not want Kentaro to go home either. Mm-hmm. I think I would have sent Kenya. I didn't like that black dress at all. Not at all. Yeah. I don't know. I thought for sure she was out this week. But
I thought it would be her in the bottom 3 instead of having a top 4. I think it should have been Kenya, Kentaro, and Michael in the bottom 3. Mm-hmm. But I agree with Michael going home, just of the aspect of, like, I haven't liked very many of his looks.
Really?
This season. I certainly didn't like his look from last week, and that's all the further I can remember because I'm old.
He made that awesome dress for Lyris with, like, the feathers and the gold.
Oh, yes, for the Descendants Challenge. I think that's, like, the one that I really, really liked, and then not much else.
He made, crap.
I don't like his personality, though, either. Like, he seems fake nice, just like Margarita, where he, like, acts nice. And I like that he bonded with Margarita, and I liked seeing their friendship, but the whole, like, twin thing, and then him marching off the stage, and then be like, I don't mean to create a scene. I'm like, honey, that you literally just, the definition in the dictionary, let me look it up. Yep, it's somebody walking off stage. Like, I don't know. And then him and Margarita, this whole episode, it just felt like every time they had their talking head, they weren't really talking about, like, their look or their own struggles. They were just like, oh, Kenya and Ayana, they're just dressmakers. They're not designers. Or, oh, Brandon's really struggling. Maybe he's out of ideas. And it's like, maybe if you spent less time talking about other people, you'd have more time to improve your designs. Mic drop.
Yeah, jeez.
But he went home and had to pack up his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do you have anything else to say about the runway of the judging or anything?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. I'll do my quotes of the week, and then I do have one other thing to get to before we go to next week. But I have quite a few quotes this week because I feel like we had quite a few winners. So Brandon in the workroom was struggling, and Tim came around and, like, pointed out that, like, you seem to be struggling. You were struggling last week. And Brandon just said in this odd tone, he's like, it's a tough one, Tim. Like, and I feel for the designers, especially when they have to work with unconventional materials. Like, when they go to Mood and shoot themselves in the foot by picking a bad fabric, I don't feel bad for them. Like, sorry, you should know better than to pick, like, a weird fabric that got you sent home. Mm-hmm. But with unconventional materials, it's like, normally you don't get to pick, and then what you do pick may or may not work out, like his, like, tinfoil top thing. Or like it was a blanket kind of thing, but I just liked that. It's a tough one, Tim. Like, yeah, it is. And then Christina, who was Michael's model, I believe, when she first came in for the initial fitting, all he had to put on her was the bungee cords. So she's wearing, like, her own, like, bra and underwear, and he's, like, wrapping the bungee cords around her in front of all the other models, which I guess for models maybe it's normal. Like, they're, like, taking their shirts and, like, pants off left and right in the workroom, and the cameras are tastefully cutting away. But she was like, grab some pizza and some popcorn, because you're going to see a naked girl in Project Runway, which would not be the first. We have seen people have, like, a butt slip, or, like, some side boob action, but she just was like, I really hope he's not just going to put you down and crisscross bungee cord. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of funny. She said that in the model mirror. And then later that same, like, kind of model mirror time, Lyra said, I look like Pocahontas is going to play football. And it's just because the look that Kentaro made felt very Native American. And then also was the crop top, and it was probably just because Fire Hose is thick and heavy, had such a strong shoulder, it just looked like Lyris was, like, going to go tackle somebody. Like, it was intense. Yeah. But I just liked that kind of, like, joke of, like, Pocahontas going to go play football.
Well, and can I add on to that real quick? And, like, the way she said that was so, like, diva. She was like, oh, he's so clueless. This is just Pocahontas. Like, exactly what you said.
Yeah. I think that's a little rude, coming from a model to say of a designer when they're working with hard materials. Like, I think clueless is a little harsh, but it didn't look good. And it could be that, you know, it's a culture difference or a language barrier. Like, he may have never heard of Pocahontas or knew that she's not just a Disney movie character. She was a real human being. Like, I don't think she looked quite the same as the Disney movie, but, you know, so it's just like, so maybe he didn't know that, like, putting those things together, you know, was maybe reminiscent of a culture that you probably shouldn't turn into a weird fire hose costume of. But yeah, that was a little harsh from Lyris. But Lyris, she does not hold anything back. She's not pull punches. And for that, we salute you. Be you. Like, if, you know, because no one else can be. So, you know, even if it's not always your best, you gotta do it. Carly, our guest judge, said of Michael's design, to be very blunt, it looks hookerish. Yeah. And that poor model has now heard that twice this season, but I had to agree with her in this instance. It looked very, Maggie disagrees. Maggie really liked it. She's making some
really like it.
She's making some very dramatic.
I didn't hate it.
Some dramatic eye rolling. But the guest judge Carly had a lot of really great things to say. Next up, Zach, about to Margarita, was like, I don't know what you have to say about fashion. And coming from Zach Posen, other than, like, when he says, like, I don't like your fabric, it's ugly, that's so harsh to hear, where it's like you're in the top 6, you want to be a fashion designer, she already works as a fashion designer. To hear a famous fashion designer say, I don't know what you have to say about fashion, shows that like they don't know who you are as a designer. They don't know the girl that you're dressing. All of her looks look different, and I think it's because she's a bit of a chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever's going on in the workroom affects her deeply on a personal level, and while she isn't, recreating things a la Claire and Sean, she is certainly soaking up the juju of the room and using some of those ideas as well. But I think that's just kind of a harsh thing, and Margarita looked pretty surprised when he said it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to agree, like, her looks are all over the place. Like, if you line them all up. Like, say what you want about Brandon, they all look like they'd be in the same runway show.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with most of Kentaro's pieces outside of this one, or even Michael's. Like, you can kind of tell, like, where they're going. But
Mm-hmm.
And then Carly said about Kentaro's look, it's not, to me, very fashion-y.
God.
And I have one more quote from Carly before I just sink my fangs into this. About Ayana, Margarita, and Michael's look, she said, I love the blue!
God.
This is my main issue with having random young actresses from a random TV show or movie on as a judge for design high fashion looks. When you say something isn't very fashion-y, and you're on national television judging people who this could affect the rest of their lives or their career, I'm sorry, you're not qualified. When the best or worst thing you can say about a look is that I like the blue, I'm sorry. You're not qualified. There's occasionally things, like, I know that I talk so fast that I'll flub words all the time, but, this is a little podcast. I'm not on national television telling people, it's a pleats. I don't like the red, her insights were not insights. It had nothing to say. She's not the first person on this season or this show to have a random judge. It doesn't matter, but I'm just like, at least get actresses or singers or something like that, men and women who do fashion design or who design shoes or something, or bring in somebody who works in construction. I don't know, like, at least that would be like, oh, I've never seen a hard hat used like that. Okay, I'd rather hear that than I like blue.
Yeah.
Bring back in the Lexus guy, I don't know.
Her tone about everything, too, was just kind of overall negative, I felt. Like, kind of condescending.
Yeah, a very monotone voice and then condescending, and then she didn't have anything good to say. So I'm like, well, you can't judge and be condescending to other people when the highlight of your critique was that it doesn't look very fashion-y, and to be blunt, looks hookerish. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's not enough. Like, not impressed. Then after Ayana won, she went back into like the little room behind the stage, and she was all alone, and she's like, just me celebrating me, and she's like doing a little dance. But I liked that line, because sometimes like you have like a win or like a personal victory or some like big kind of thing in your life, and it's only you like at that moment, or maybe you're at a part in your life where it's only you to be like, heck yeah, I did the thing and I did it good job me. But it's just me celebrating me. So, and this is not her first win. She's had one before where she could come in and everybody could be like, yay. And then after Michael left, he said something along the lines of that he was really thankful for being in a place where he could be surrounded by other creative people, and then he felt that it helped his creative kind of juices. And as a creative person who's worked on creative teams, and as a person who's worked on not very creative teams, I have to agree. And I feel like, especially for like fashion design, and he's kind of young still, he's like mid-20s, like it probably is hard to find other fashion designers to like, kind of like commiserate with and collaborate with at your level, to be like, okay, I'm not the only one who's struggling, and I'm not the only one with these kind of creative or wackadoo ideas. And I'm glad that he found a friend in Margarita and got along with other folks. So like, yeah, it's always sad when people leave, especially when they're young, but, and I liked parts of, Michael's personality and some of the stuff he made, but, I just liked that quote about, like, that he's appreciative of at least the time he had, and that he hopes he can find something like that in the future. So, good luck, Michael, on your future endeavors. And then the show cut a little weirdly, and I feel like if you weren't a big Project Runway fan, you may have been confused. But this past week, Michael Knight, who was a designer on season 3 of Project Runway, and then he was also in All Stars, died. And the episode this time was like in tribute to him, but it felt, the way they did it was kind of weird because they're both named Michael, so it looked like Michael of this episode died. Like, if you, like,
That-
I was following on Twitter, obviously, because I watched season 3. Michael Knight was, like, in the top 4. He won the fan favorite for that season. Season 3, I also loved Laura on that season. There's a ton of, and Jeffrey, like, there's a ton of great people on that season. And then when he came back for All Stars, like, loved Michael Knight. Sorry that he had to struggle so much with health things, and, like, rest in peace. But so many people were on Twitter were like, oh my God, did he die? Like, thinking that Michael from this season did. So even though they spell it differently, and they obviously meant it in a good way, and I'm glad that they did something in the episode, you know, in reference to him, but it just felt a little...
That was not included on Lifetime.com.
Oh, really?
Episode.
Oh, see, a version I watched did have it. But I'm glad they said something, because he was very young to have that happen, and he had his own successful line that was getting more traction, so... Always a bummer, obviously, when anybody dies, but especially when it's, you know, a young person finally kind of getting, you know, what they deserve. Because he made some cool looks, and he made it really far in his season, so. And just a fun personality, so you will be missed, Michael. And then next week, looks like they're going to do a high fashion look inspired by warrior women.
Yeah.
So that should be pretty cool, because a lot of designers in the past, like this season and past seasons, like they want to design for like the modern day warrior woman. And then with earlier this year, I think it was in June, that Wonder Woman came out. And, you know, you might have your own opinions on that movie. I personally liked it quite a bit, and I really liked the design for Diana and what she wore. So I'm hoping we see some really cool designs. And I think we have some designers left who will make some cool stuff. So
Yeah.
So that'll be exciting. But otherwise, do you have any other closing statements this week?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm guessing this was probably the last unconventional. Since we're down to, 5 people now?
I don't know, man. Last season, they had 2 back-to-back.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that
that's
when we get to
true.
the top ones, we could have another. I'm assuming there's going to be at least one more episode where they travel.
Yeah.
Or I hope so.
They haven't really traveled at all.
Um,
yet. Like, where have they gone?
Well, they went to Lyndhurst Castle.
Where is that?
Not very far.
Okay.
So, yeah. They, last season, they, flew down to Universal Studios in Florida and then Austin, Texas. So I'm guessing we'll get one more trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping there's another unconventional challenge, because I always like them. I just hope the next one's a little more differentiated than just more like plastic bits, but we'll see.
Right. Yeah, this was just an okay episode. Nothing super exciting. Kind of a disappointing, material. But it was alright. Another one in the books.
Yep, and next week it's top 5, so the pressure's really cooking, because it could be, obviously we still have the Tim Gunn save, so someone could go home next week and then we'd still have another week of 5. But we've seen plenty of final runways now at Fashion Week that have had 4 designers instead of the typical 3. So we could be seeing minus 1 person the final 4. Or they might send 2 and we'll go back to a final 3. But so it'll be interesting to see. It's getting on in the season. So otherwise, I think that's it for us.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind you guys that we are on Instagram and Twitter at RavRunway, so you can follow us there, interact with us there. And then exciting news, we are now on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, so you can finally listen to us on the go and not just on YouTube or WordPress. Woo. So if you want to go out there, you can find us just searching Runway from the Rav. And if you want to rate and or comment us, that would help us a ton, because obviously there's a ton of podcasts out there. But obviously ours is the best.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. But otherwise, I think that's it for us this week, and we'll see you guys next week.